Sam from the Cameroonian perspective. Mr. Sam, I'm sorry you had problems with your camera and your speaker microphone earlier, but thank you for joining us. And just before you joined, yes, sir. Just before you joined, I was asking the honorable. Yeah, I was asking the honorable. I said, when we talk about women empowerment, for instance, in Cameroon, what does it look like?
Women empowerment in Cameroon has different facets. You know, we look at it in terms of human rights, in terms of their participation in politics, their participation in education, their participation in day-to-day parliamentary work and in elections. So it is something that is taken seriously, because we know that the education of when you educate a woman, you have educated the nation. So our legislation has done it in such a way that women are given priority in most aspects of our public life. And that is why the government of Cameroon ratified the Convention of the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against women in 1995. And it has got to a point where women have equal rights with men, even when it comes to inheriting property. In the past, it used to be difficult for women in Cameroon to inherit property from their fathers. So it is something that we have given a lot of attention to, and we are making progress as the years go by.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You've just answered my next question. But I'm still going to ask it anyway, because I also want to cover Mrs. Sam, what is it like in terms of Cameroon, the Cameroonian experience, and for women as well? You did mention earlier about property ownership for women, but does it go beyond property ownership? What about access to other social economic services within, or social services within Cameroon? How easily is it for women to access those services? Because most of all of these services cost money, and we all know that women's disposable income is not as good as men's own. So are they able to freely access these services, or there are hindrances to their accessing these services? Mr. Sam, are you still with us?
Yes, thank you so much. The government has made it in such a way that women have been given access to certain vocational institutions, institutions of agriculture. That is why there is an association in Cameroon known as Bayam Selam. You know, the rural woman, they have a structure which regulates their activities, their agricultural activities. And you notice that in Cameroon, women have become the breadbasket of the nation. And you see them very dynamic in this association. It's not about the educational level. Even women who have not gone to school belong to this association. So they coordinate their activities. They go and get food stuff from rural communities and bring to the city. So whatever happens in this association is regulated. There is a mandate for the executive bureau, such that after some time, they conduct their elections freely. Women have access even to traditional leadership. In Cameroon, there are some women who are traditional rulers. For instance, in Yaoundé, there are some chiefdoms where you have women as traditional rulers. And they have the same authority as men who are traditional rulers. Women have been given the opportunity to occupy positions in parliament, in the Senate. And that is why if you draw up a list for elections and there is no woman on your list, it is rejected. Because there must be gender balance. Yes.
Thank you very much. And I'm glad that you're saying this, but I'm going to bring you back to what the research says. Mr. Sam, what about in Cameroon? If women now own lands in their name, why are they still struggling from what we see from the research? Okay, so I mean, some of these research have all been data verified because as researchers, we report on what the data says. Now, the report still says, in terms of finance for women entrepreneurs, women there's still a huge gap between the male and the female because banks are more inclined to finance men because they have collaterals and women don't get as much. So if what you say the government has helped women to acquire lands in their names, so how come there's still that gap because women don't have collateral when they go for finance?
Yes. What actually happens is that the banks, they don't discriminate as such. It's not because they are women that they can't obtain funding from the banks. The issue is that women have an advantage in that sometimes their husbands serve as surety for them to obtain loans from the banks. And sometimes they go around this issue by obtaining loans from cooperative or microfinance institutions. And there is another aspect of funding which women can get from cultural groups. They call them njangis. These are cultural groups that meet monthly and make some deposits. And if you have any viable project, you can apply for a loan. Sometimes it goes up to 4 million, 5 million francs CFA. The only thing is that you need to have two witnesses to testify that you are able to pay back this money, and it will be given to you. The advantage with these njangis or microfinances is that their interest loans, their interest rates are very low as compared to banks that have exorbitant interest rates. So there are many avenues open to women for obtaining funding for their projects. You just need to convince the institution that the project is viable, is a project that can help the community, and
Yes.
you certainly get the funding.
Yeah, but now you're leaving it again. These are alternative finance sources. So
Yes.
we now have to rely on alternative sources rather than the traditional sources that everybody will be the go-to source for everyone because that is not working out for them. Now, whereas these traditional sources may be cheaper, but the term may also be shorter. So with a bank, you can get a loan for 10, 20 years. With these traditional sources, you may not be able to get it for 10, 20 years. And we know that a lot of businesses don't break even for 5 years even. A lot of businesses take longer than that to really, really break even. So when they're under pressure to repay that loan, it has a lot of impact on their empowerment. So why hasn't the policies of the government been able to address the traditional sources of funding to be more favorable to women? Why do they have to depend on these alternative sources?
No, it becomes easier for women if they constitute themselves into groups, maybe groups of development initiatives. And this time they get funding from the ministry that is in charge of vocational training and other medium and small size enterprises. So they get funding from such government bodies. Because as an individual, it becomes a bit difficult to get funding. But when you constitute yourselves in a group, you have an organized structure with rules and regulations, with a constitution. It makes it easier for government it makes it easier to attract funding from government.
Okay. All right, I'm going to ask the next question, and actually two more questions, and then we'll go on to the people who are in the meeting to see what questions they have to ask. So I'm going to go back to you, Honor. I'll start with you, Mr. Sam, because you're still in front of me. Then I'll come to Honorable. What would you say are the biggest hindrances for empowering women in your country?
One of the hindrances is the reluctance of some women to go to school. The girl child, sometimes some of them rush into early marriages. So if you are not educated, it becomes a bit difficult to be empowered. But as the years go by, this situation is changing. You find that in some areas, women have become top-notch intellectuals, even in universities. So the situation is not as it used to be in the past. They are gradually getting education. They are gradually becoming professionals. And you find that in some structures in the country where you never found women, women are excelling.
So, if I hear you correctly, is the lack of education.
Yeah, lack of education in a way, yeah.
Okay, but I thought that is a government issue then.
It's not really a government issue as such, because government has opened schools in nearly all the administrative units. So, and it is free of charge. They don't charge school fees in primary and secondary schools. We pay school fees only at the universities. So it is open to everybody, men and women alike, to be able to obtain education. So sometimes it is maybe parents who don't encourage their girl children to go to school. They think that maybe if they send them to early marriages, it will be a way of maybe getting money.
But they're doing that because of poverty.
Yes, because of poverty.
Yes. So
and then ignorance, not only poverty, but ignorance.
But then doesn't that become then a government issue? Because if the government puts a literacy program in place without taking care of the belly issues, let me put it that way, because people need to survive. Livelihood is an important factor. Now, in Africa, in order for us to go beyond looking at our girls as a source of income, because when they get married, they bring in dowries, they bring in son-in-laws who have money, who will be able to come and get us out of poverty. So we see the girls as commodities for marriage, so that the marriage can in turn help us come out of poverty. So if we don't take care of the poverty issue, then the people will not stop seeing the girls as commodities for marriage. So is there a policy in place for the government to address issues of poverty, so that, because why is it only the girls who are not going to school? The boys are going because they're not seen as that kind of commodity.
Well, a lot of sensitization is going on with respect to that issue. And it gets to a point where even when girls who started school get pregnant, they allow them to give birth and come back to school. They don't dismiss them for getting pregnant. They allow them, give them time to go and give birth and then come back to school. So sometimes, even with the sensitization, there are some people who are adamant. They don't receive this message. They take all their time to be able to follow steps that government has laid down for them. But it's going to be an issue where, especially in the rural areas, where some traditions, some women, maybe because of some traditional titles they hold, they feel that it will obstruct them to further their education.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. Mr. Nwanja, what is the way forward for Cameroon?
Yes, there is a way forward. First of all, Government should organize scholarship schemes for women who excel in education. There should also be some schemes, financial loan schemes for women who come up with projects, especially for the rural area. You know that 51% of the population of Cameroon is occupied by women. Women account for 51% of the overall population of Cameroon. So their strength, their numbers are very strategic in the progress of our nation. So the government has every reason to organize scholarships. It has every reason to encourage women in their projects that they come up with. They have every reason to come up with health schemes to be able to sensitize a child not to get pregnant while in school. Because with the boys, it's a different issue. They need to be educated in such a way that they avoid a teenage pregnancy. And government is doing this through a lot of sensitization programs that are done in schools. The other issue is trying to empower the women, educate them how to run their homes. That is why in all primary schools in Cameroon, you have what they call the domestic sciences, where they teach women how to do needlework, how to cook, so that when they become, they reach the age of maturity, they will be able to take care of their homes as wives. So there are a number of avenues where government is focusing on the improvement of the lot of women.
Thank you. I did say Professor Colette was supposed to be part of this discussion because she was going to bring to us what the research is saying concerning what we found. We have discussed a lot. We've identified three main culprits here: poverty, illiteracy, early marriage. But one thing that has been missing from this discussion is corruption. Research has shown that corruption in Africa is really having a huge impact on women. It is because of corruption that a lot of the policies are not even implemented properly, that people who are asked to implement the proper policies because of corruption have not really done what they're supposed to do. And with the corruption studies, we have also seen how women are extorted, not for money because they don't have money to give, but they're extorted for sex. So there is a new focus now on sextortion in different countries in Africa. Now, so I want to share with you some of what we have found briefly, and then we'll get on to the people in the meeting so that they can be part of the discussion. Can you see my screen, everyone? Yes?
Yes, I can see it. Yes, I can see it.
Okay. So I'll try and make it bigger. Okay, so we'll just look briefly at what the studies have shown. So corruption has a huge impact, but more on women, because women are part of the vulnerable group. Okay, so they are extorted in so many ways. Now, in terms of access to finance, you have all, both of you have told us all that the government is doing to give women more access, but still they don't have enough access. They don't have access to financial resources. They don't have access to markets. They don't have access to even the services that they need to grow their businesses. The regulations also, there are challenges there because of some corruptions in the bureaus that process their documents. They don't get access to what they're supposed to have. Then also in the informal sector, women are mostly here, and most of the women in the informal sector are also illiterate, so they cannot pursue any legal recourse if they feel that they are being extorted by anybody. And because of this corruption, there has been a loss of revenue all round. But that's not the where I'm going to focus my attention on now. Is the way forward. Is it possible that we can go beyond where we are? Everybody knows that there's corruption. Every government, ECOWAS, AU, SADC, all of them have corruption protocols in their policy agendas, but still nothing is being done. Why? Because we have a lot of weak institutions and weak systems, weak judicial systems. We heard some from a lawyer in South Africa saying that when women have cases that they bring to court, the judges, the magistrates, they want to sleep with them in order to even give them a fair judgment. So that brings us back to the case of sextortions, which is what I want to talk about today. Women being extorted for their bodies because they don't have money to pay. So Tabitha did a study in Kenya. Her PhD study was done in Kenya, and Kenyan women were being asked to sleep with men to get a space to sell their goods in the markets. Just to even get a shop, you have to sell your body to get a shop to be able to put food on the table for your family. Now, my question to you, and I'm going to leave that slide because it's such a lot. I'll share it with everyone who has come to the meeting. My question to you, what is the government doing to protect women from sexual exploitation? Honorable? Yes, Assam, yeah.
Yes. First of all, what the government has done in Cameroon is that they have created the Anti-Corruption Commission, which goes into investigative, they investigate all these causes of incidents of corruption, be it to men, to women. And they have a toll-free number. There's a toll-free number that if a woman in whatever circumstances is found being a victim of corruption, you call this number, and the person who is perpetrating this corruption will be investigated and prosecuted. And then you also have the National Commission on Bilingualism and Multiculturalism. What is this commission all about? It's about equity. It's about decency in public life, such that if anybody, by virtue of your power, your authority, you abuse women, maybe through your language, through any kind of insult, you are brought to book. And then there is this National Communications Council, which regulates our media space in such a way that, because sometimes this corruption is done even in social media, it's done through the internet, and these people are monitored. So if you are one of those people who is taking advantage of women through scamming, through fraud, and you are caught, you are brought to book. That is why in Cameroon, it is noted that women who are in authority are very strict, are very rigorous in their management. And if you happen to go against women in terms of corruption, and you find yourself in front of a magistrate who is a lady, you have the maximum penalty, because there will be no mercy.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Sam, I'm taking you back, and I put up this slide so that you will see that when we looked at corruption, the problem that we have with corruption is that we have incumbent systems that needs to be shaken or dislodged. Now, when we talked about corruption, I talked about the political system, the justice, the judiciary system. All of these systems have been corrupted one way or another. So you're telling me now that laws have been put in place that when anybody is caught, that they will be dealt with very well. But the people who are implementing the laws are men. The people who are committing these, the people who are doing this against women are men. So how can they police themselves? How can they effectively protect the women when they're also the perpetrators of this? So do you think such a framework is even possible, that the people who are committing the same acts are kept in charge of policing the same acts that they're also responsible for? Because until we have more women making policies, until we have more women in those ranks that we don't currently have, it's very difficult to police. So we believe as researchers that the current structure is not working, because you're telling us all the good things, but the research is saying the people who are on the ground, their lived experiences are different. Not all of them have access to some of these things that you're talking about. Not all of them have experienced this. I'll give you a good example. During COVID-19, there was lockdown. The government in Nigeria put a COVID-19 policy that to help some businesses. And then I think it was in Ghana, really. So the policy was to help companies that had X number of employees. Some of these small businesses only have 1 or 2 or 3 employees. So they felt that they were not qualified. But they did not realize that they could come together, 5 or 6 or 7 businesses, and they will qualify for that, and they will do it like a teamwork. So while the government thinks we have done this, the people on ground did not even know how they could benefit from what the governments have done. And there was no effort to let them know that this is what could happen. So there is a difference between what is on paper and the reality on ground for people, which is where we're having this discussion. So if you say on paper, we have the laws in place to protect against people who do this or do that, but who are the ones implementing the laws? Are they not the same people who are perpetuating the laws? And will this be a way forward for us if we continue, or we need something new? So with that, I'm going to leave the floor open for anyone who has a question. I'm aware that when you came into the meeting, your mics were muted and your cameras were also turned off, but I've corrected that now. So if you have a question, you can simply raise your hand with the icon, and then we'll take the questions one by one. Okay. Any questions or any contributions from anybody? So simply raise your hands, and then we'll take them one by one. And if there are any questions in the chat, I'll see quickly. Any questions? Yes, Khadijatu.
Good afternoon, Dr. Bridget.
Good afternoon,
good afternoon to our speakers and colleagues here today. Just to say a very big thank you to the speakers firstly. It was a very interesting conversation. I guess for me, the most interesting part was listening to how the various speakers talked about, within their different contexts, the complex interaction between religious, social, and policy factors, and how all these impact women's economic empowerment, as well as their access to and control over land. So I have 2 questions. The first question is for Honorable Kinte, and the second one is for Dr. Sam. So the question for Honorable Kinte, so you mentioned in your when Dr. Bridget asked about some of the challenges, and you talked about various challenges such as poverty, illiteracy. I just wanted to understand, within the context of the Gambia, whether you see the large burden on women in terms of free domestic work, whether you feel this impacts women's economic empowerment, and if it does, to what extent or magnitude do you think this affects women's economic empowerment? So the one for Dr. Sam is a bit of a comment or a request. If you could provide a bit more information in terms of, so you mentioned there is a, I'm not sure if this is right, a policy or an act around inheritance for women. So if you could throw a bit of light And it was interesting to hear this because I remember at some point I and Dr. Kemi were having some conversation about women and inheritance within sub-Saharan Africa. So if you could throw a bit more light in terms of how that is working within the context of your country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sam. Khadija asked about land ownership, right? Khadija.
Yes, thank you so much. The legal framework for this women ownership, as I told you, is a convention that was ratified by Cameroon on the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women. And as soon as this was ratified in 1995, any woman who has issues of inheritance takes that matter to court, and the woman is given the rightful ownership of the property. So you see that a lot of things have changed, even in the issue of nationality. In Cameroon, you don't lose your nationality by virtue of marriage. So even when you are married to somebody who doesn't come from Cameroon, you don't lose your nationality. And in the past, women have always needed authorization to travel abroad from their husband. That is no longer the case. So this issue of ownership, inheritance, has been backed up by the ratification of this convention of the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women. So it is a reality. It's no longer something of it's no longer, it's a reality.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for your contributions, for your patience throughout today. And we're sorry we started advertising this webinar very late because we didn't get the confirmations on time. And today one of our speakers got COVID, so she just couldn't make it. And the other one also, I don't know why I've been unable to reach her. So maybe it's connection problem because she's in Botswana, and the connection there is also not very good. So, but for the two speakers who have been able to speak to us today, thank you. We do not take this for granted. We know that you're very busy, but you've made time to come talk to us today. And we hope that we'll have more opportunities to call on you in the future so that you can come and speak to us about issues concerning women and girls. To all of you who are here, thank you very much for attending. And we look forward to seeing you all in the next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bridget. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much
for giving me the privilege. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
It was not easy to be surrounded by women who are so knowledgeable. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
God bless you.
And you too. Thank
you.
I want to thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this webinar.